Abraham Wald was a mathematician. In World War II, he was invited in a team whose goal was to build the fighter plane's armor. The problem was that you can't put armor everywhere, it's too heavy. They had to decide the best place for the armor to put to keep the balance, flying, and protection. Officers investigated the planes that returned from the battles, and they found that they got the most hit around the body and only few around the engine. They came to the logical conclusion that they should put the most armor around the body. But not Abraham Wald. He said, we don't put the armor where the bullet holes are, but we put the armor where the bullet holes are not, on the engines. He asked the question to the group, where are the missing holes? The missing bullet holes were on the missing planes. Because the reason that planes returned from the battles with fewer holes around the engine was because the ones which got hit in the engine weren't coming back. Abraham Wald realized that studying the feedback on returning planes is just only half of the story. If he wants to understand the other half, he should use critical thinking. Half-truths like this are all around us in life and work. It's not the issue that they exist, but that we treat them as the truth. Let me just guide you, let's just discuss 3 of them together. Building the culture of feedback is almost every company's top priority. The underlying belief is that people need feedback. Even some authors argue that Gen Y, Z, and millennials need feedback more because they are addicted to social media. And they argue that the Facebook like and Instagram's love button increases the dopamine in human body, so they require feedback stronger. It may be true, but if we take a closer look, a different picture begins to emerge. A few years ago, Facebook implemented new emojis. Isn't it interesting? Why don't we have this like button? Do you think they didn't think of it? Snapchat, having 200 billion users, don't use a single button for judgment. You just post a story and it automatically disappears in 24 hours. No pressure for feedback. If Snapchat example is any guide, it would seem that or social media is more about self-expression. It looks that attention is more valuable than feedback. When we give people feedback, in many, many companies, it is more about today than how do you perform for me? And less about how well do we work together. Attention, you may say that, feedback is more valuable and attention and feedback is a kind of an attention. You're right, but it is only one type and certainly not the most efficient one. It is a lot more easier to listen carefully, which is hard for managers, which is not easy for managers. But why should they? Just think of it. How many managers you promoted because they are good listeners? Yeah, you can count on your fingers. If we really want to improve our feedback culture, we should emphasize more attention than feedback. Let's see half-truth number 2. I was working with a manager of a service desk a couple of years ago in a big multinational IT company, and he told me that he gave negative feedback to one of his team members and his performance increased because of the punishment. All employees sometimes are like Rambo, and the other times are like Mr. Bean. We may say that our performance fluctuates in time around our average. Managers mainly give feedback when we do something extraordinarily good and give negative feedback when we do something extraordinarily bad. Small things don't go for feedback. But when we do something outstanding, it is possible that other factors, like fortune, played a significant role in our success. And as our performance fluctuates around our average, it will naturally return to the average independently if we give negative or positive feedback. This is called regression to the mean. This manager made an error that he ascribed cause-effect relation to random fluctuation of a process. Luckily, it is easy to overcome this issue. When our employees do something good or something bad, or incrementally do something or something good or bad, we should praise them or punish them. This is how we can, let's say, overcome this phenomenon. What evidence do we have that if we ask people to work on their shortcomings, it makes them more satisfied and more engaged? Gallup's researchers made a study where the people mainly got feedback on their strengths, weaknesses, or no feedback at all. When they matched the answers with the engagement scores, what they found was that no feedback was the worst. And feedback, it was 40 times better if feedback was given on weaknesses. It's time to celebrate. Wait a minute. It was 30 times better still to give feedback on strengths. Simply put, if you correct someone's grammar, will not make him a good writer. But if you give feedback on strengths, it may encourage him to continue. And this leads me to half-truth number 3. We tend to believe, or we tend to say, that feedback must be objective and people can rate each other reliably. A friend of mine told me that she received the feedback from her manager, and he said that she must be more flexible. I just asked her what she thought her manager meant. And she said that I'm a responsible person and I'm consistent to follow company policies. And he asked me to follow the rules less strictly. How objective this feedback was. Don't you think it's flexible? Or maybe 5? And was the feedback about my friend's behavior? Or it was more about the preference of the manager? We should be very careful when we evaluate somebody, because we use our values and our filters, and our feedback say more about us than about the other person. Companies recognized that it is easier for people to rate each other if they are given a framework. This is called competency model. The first issue is that what guarantees that the competences are selected correctly? Why something is in and why something is out? When you buy a survey system, you're told that the competences were chosen based on analyzing results of other companies. For me, they are more like Columbo's wife. She was mentioned in every part of the popular TV series, but actually nobody saw her. Have you seen those studies they refer to? Secondly, what guarantees that if competences showed some correlation with results somewhere else, will result the same in your organization. How true it is that if the reference groups possess some common competencies, then the best ones are the ones who have them all. And thirdly, let's see the data. Let's take the competency of decision making. They measure it in a way that, or decision making. They measure it in a way that, let's say, he quickly makes decision. If I rate you good on this, all we know is that I think you make decisions quicker than I would. This is simply guessing. The raters are unreliable and they put bad data in the system. You may say, or you may think, that's why we have more raters. Their average can compensate this anomaly. They won't. Trust me, I'm an engineer. We will have more bad data because each rater's input is not reliable, as a bad input. Average does not turn bad data to good data. A grandson asked his grandfather that, what's average? And he says that you're 10 years old and I'm 70. Together it's 80 and the average is 40. And 40 is the most beautiful age for man. However, neither of us are able to attract a beautiful woman. Yeah, so we should be really, and feedback is mainly about what we are, but how we learn self-reflection then. I always tell that don't let anybody fool you. You're able to do that on your own, all by yourself. So feedback must not be really about, it's not objective and it should not be really about our judgment, but it is more about our performance or development, I'm sorry. Abraham Wald looked at those planes that returned from the battles as feedback on the war, just like we do with feedback and performance reviews at workplaces. He investigated closer how the information and data was collected and structured. And then he came up with solutions that work better. I do believe that the culture of feedback needs another look, because our employees are crashing and burning just like those planes, just like those early fighter planes. If we want, but yeah, some of us or most of us are like the officers, and only some of us have the courage to be like Abraham Wald. But we are experts, HR professionals, engineers, and our job is to strengthen the system to improve employee engagement. From a distance, everybody seems to be right, but from closer, some are wrong. Thank you.